I'm going to be starting a brand new series today called BeamNG.edu. What I'll be doing in this series is I'll be playing BeamNG.drive to hopefully teach y'all a couple things that I've learned through decades of sim racing experience. I started sim racing back in Gran Turismo 1 days. I have played several different titles in the meantime. I've learned a ton of tips and I'm here to share that with you guys. And in each video, I'm not only going to be sharing fundamentals with you, but I'm also going to throw some more nuanced tidbits. So stay tuned if you want to learn as much as you can and be able to improve your skills by doing so. So with this very first video, I wanted to touch on tires. Tires are one of the most overlooked but important aspects of the performance of your car and the way it feels in general when you're driving it. The first thing we want to talk about is actually the physical properties of the tire. When we look at this tire here, let's imagine that for a second, this car in front of us is a rear-wheel drive vehicle, and this tire is the one that the power is actually going to. We have to consider our tires to be actually just another gear in our drivetrain system. And the reason that is because the diameter of your tire can actually affect the overall top speed and acceleration of your vehicle. The axle driving the tire is going to remain the same regardless. If you're going 3,000 RPMs with your engine and you're in fourth gear, you're going to be going a certain speed. Now you could change that speed you're going at 3,000 RPMs in fourth gear just by changing your tire diameter. The lower a diameter generally is going to have a higher acceleration and a lower top speed. And the opposite can be said about a larger diameter tire. A larger diameter tire will have a lower acceleration and a higher top speed. It's the same concept as changing your gearing. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a couple examples and how it can actually affect the way you may want to approach your tune build whenever you're trying to get the most out of your vehicle in a certain scenario. All right, so I left this car in a stock form, except I put a 6-speed transmission in there so I could change the gearing. Now I'm able to top out the vehicle right at 69 miles per hour. It's hitting the engine rev limiter at my highest gear, so that's the very top speed this car will go in its current state. Let's see if we can change just the tires. We're going to try to keep the same compound, and let's see how that affects our overall top speed. Something else I do want to mention when it comes to tires is the way that they format the sizing. You need to know the tire size and what it means. Let's actually look at the default tire size on this car. It's a 175/70 R13. It's going to be a metric size for the most part. The 175 is going to be the width of the tire in millimeters. So this is a 175 millimeter wide tire. And the second number is going to be representing the height of one sidewall. The 70 is a percentage of the width. This number can vary and this number can vary, but the second number is always a percentage of the first number. The first number is always the width in millimeters. The second number is always a percentage of that width in millimeters to represent how tall the sidewall is. You can use that to figure out the entire height of the entire assembly by using the next number in line. The next one's going to be 13. The R is not important. That just means it's a radial tire. Almost every tire you're going to see nowadays has that R in there. However, the 13 in this situation is important because that is actually our wheel size in inches. We have a 13-inch wheel diameter with a sidewall that's 70% of the 175 millimeters. If we wanted to do the math to discover how many inches tall our entire assembly is, we would do a little bit of a calculation here. So we're going to do 175 times 0.7, 122.5. That's how many millimeters tall a sidewall is on our tire. How many millimeters are in an inch? I think it's like 24, 26. It's 25.4 millimeters in 1 inch. Divide this by 25.4, and then we get 4.82 inches. One of our sidewalls is 4.82 inches. Keep in mind, you have a sidewall on the top and a sidewall on the bottom. If you want to get your total height, you need to account for both of those sidewalls. So we're going to do it times 2, 9.64 inches. And then we're going to take the diameter of our entire wheel, which is 13 inches. So we're going to add 13 inches to that. Our entire wheel and tire assembly height is 22.65 inches roughly. That's just an FYI, just an education there on how you calculate your tire size and what this number actually represents. Hopefully that'll help you in the future. It's good to know in real life as well, not only in a racing environment. If you're trying to, get some custom wheel and tires on your car, you'll know if they're going to fit basically. So there's that. We're going to go ahead and find another standard tire size in here. And it's going to be a 165, 70, 13. Since this is a percentage of the first number, the sidewall height is actually going to be less because it's a percentage of a less number. And we do a 165 times 0.7. It's a 115.5, 7 millimeters less, actually. That's one of the sidewalls. We double that. It's like half an inch basically overall, a little over half an inch overall total difference in height from these two tires. Our tires on here are a tad bit smaller, not by very much, but we should at least see some sort of difference. So the difference was somewhat substantial enough to notice. See, we're only topping at 67 now as opposed to 69 earlier, and that's just a very small difference in the tire size, and it's making just a couple miles an hour in our already very low top speed. As you can see, it does make quite an impact. So we went ahead and put that 175, 80, 13 on here. It's increasing our speed by 4 miles per hour on this very low top speed. So just this tire size alone is making quite a difference in our speed. Definitely keep that in mind whenever you're making your own build. Know what you're looking for and know how it affects your car. So now I wanted to talk about tire compound and how this actually affects the grip your car has. This isn't like a broad spectrum consistent way it is. This is going to be something you want to know about, especially when you're trying to get like a very easy car to drive. It's good to know that your tire compound will have a similar effect to your tire pressure and your sidewall thickness. What all of these have in common is they affect the way the car feels. It can be a loose yet forgiving feel, or it can be a tight, grippy, yet hard to predict feel. With a tire that is not extremely grippy, and with a pressure that is fairly low, and with a sidewall that is somewhat tall, all of those things will cause it to feel soft and forgiving, yet the grip potential will be lower. If you have a very soft grippy compound and or a high tire pressure and or a skinny sidewall, it's going to generally increase your potential grip, but it's going to make it to where whenever you lose grip, it's going to be completely lost, and whenever you regain grip, it's going to be abruptly regained. And that is the thing that makes it much more difficult to drive in a predictable way. This is a BeamNG vanilla drift setup. They put sport tires on here. You would look at this and initially think they would put race tires on here, but they put sport tires on here to make it easier to drift, to make it more smooth, to make it easier to break loose, and just overall a lot more controllable. Now we'll just go ahead and try to bust out a couple clean drifts. You saw me already drifting around a bit. You see how it's very predictable and recoverable. This car is already forgiving for sure because of the setup in general. I mean, you see the steering angle I can get. If we go ahead and change only the compound, let's see what effect it has. So we kept the same exact tire size and everything. Only the compound has changed from a sport to a race compound. So let's go ahead and see just the difference it has on our ability to drift. Now you see, it's harder to break traction for one, and when it does, it's very snappy. It's hard to get in a good long smooth drift. It wants to grip all the time, and when it doesn't grip, it's sudden, and when it regrips, it's sudden. So keep in mind, this will be affected by things besides just your tires, but your tire compound, your sidewall thickness, and your tire pressure will all have similar effects at varying degrees and in varying situations. But overall, that's the rule of thumb you kind of want to go by. and you'll want to manipulate one or the other to get the feel you're looking for. Now the tire compound is going to be the biggest impact you have there, followed by, I would say, sidewall and tire pressure are very closely, you know, on the same level. All of them are very important. However, your tire compound is going to make the biggest difference. The last thing I really wanted to talk about when it comes to tires is something to do with the driving habit and something you have to keep in your mind to be able to get the most out of your tires. And this is something very important that I learned years ago with racing, and it's the fact that your front tires have a ton of responsibilities in what they do in controlling your car. You need to make sure you separate the responsibilities of the front tire, that way they are not overloaded when you need them most. If you're going to be approaching a corner and it requires max traction, what you need to keep in mind is the amount of traction you use for braking negates the amount of traction you can use for turning. A good idea is to get as much of the braking as you can done while you're in a straight line before you start turning in, because once you start turning in, your front tires are going to be taking quite a load of turning force. Definitely want to make sure that you're going to have that ability to turn, not already, you know, utilizing all of that traction on braking. People will get in a scenario where they're going too fast into a corner and they panic and they slam on their brakes, and by doing that they're able to make the turn only less. It causes their front tires to lock up and then they just can't turn at all. So you have to find that fine balance between the amount you need to slow down to still be able to make the turn at maximum speed. Too long didn't read is the amount of traction your front tires are using for braking directly negates the amount of traction your front tires can use for turning. Same can be said in an acceleration scenario for a front-wheel drive car too. If you try to power out of a turn too soon, you're going to understeer because you're not going to be able to turn through that corner anymore. Make sure that you're turned mostly through the corner before you start powering out on a front-wheel drive or even an all-wheel drive vehicle. All right guys, so that's really going to do it for this short lesson here. Now this is not an end-all be-all for tires on your car. There is more that goes into it, but just keep in mind as we go through this learning process, most things about your car are dynamic, and the fact that they work with other systems in your vehicle, and doing one thing differently with one system in your car, it affects the other one. So what I mean by that is your suspension setup can affect the way your tires act, and vice versa. The way you set your tires up can affect the way your suspension plays, and they all tie together to create the way your car handles. So keep that in mind when you're tuning your car. Just make sure that whenever you're making adjustments, do small increments. That way you can really start to see how they impact your car and you know exactly what they did. And instead of changing a bunch of different things at once and then having a totally different vehicle and you not knowing what did what, or if you're trying to discover what does what and how to manipulate your car and learn that way, definitely just take it small changes at a time, and that should help you in the long run. So without any further rambling on, I just wanted to conclude this lesson today, and I will hopefully catch y'all on the next one. Peace out, guys.